Speaking of amazing RADvertisers, Eddie from Norcal Gun Vault joins us in studio. Good morning, Eddie.
How are you guys doing?
Before we get to the news of the day, your smokeless range, the shooting simulator, you had it at the day drinking with the maggots event. We spent a couple hours there. That video is at members.radradio.com. That thing can be anything from just a fun old time to a learning lesson.
Yes, sir.
In fact, you helped Dawn and me both with a couple of things while we were over there. I'm trying to clear the crack house because it's this amazing thing where you can go through you're shooting all the bad guys, and then at the very end, I get to the guy, he's holding a hostage, and I can't shoot the hostage. I got to shoot him, and I keep missing. And I look at you, and I saw I missed like 12 times. And you say, loosen your grip. And I looked at you, so I took my eye off everything. I loosen my grip. I go back. Boom! First shot, headshot, kill him. It's amazing the way that you can help people and how much fun it can be. Are you available most of the time? Is someone available if people are like, hey, can you help me here?
Yeah, our employees will stand by and watch if you need. If you say, hey, can you show me something? They're all shooters, so they can all kind of step in and give you pointers.
And part of it starts because you have to choose the right gun because there's different gun choices.
Yeah, the different grip angles. So you have the Glock and the 6 Hour. So you have the two different grip angles that are on 99% of the guns out there, and then it's just sighting it in and making sure you got the right grip, right stance, and that you find your dominant eye kind of things.
And you still have the shotgun and the other
shotgun, the rifle, the AR,
and you can choose any one, and they're weighted just like the real guns.
Yes,
the only thing they don't have is the recoil.
Right.
And then if you just want to have fun, you can shoot. There's wild boars, there's squirrels. Ducks,
pirates,
pirates and hookers. Although you're not supposed to shoot them, right?
Hookers.
I kept hitting the damn. Are they hookers or are they?
They're just the girlfriend.
They're just the girl. They're just a pirate girlfriend.
Right. That's what they always say when they bring me to the dinner.
So I mean, I've owned are shotguns because I hate handguns. Hate. And it's because my inability to hold them, shoot them, anything. Hate them. One day with Eddie, and I'm like, oh my God, I actually like a handgun. Like, I want to buy some now. Like, it was just a matter of, no shade to anyone else who was trying to teach me before, but it was just your ways, I guess, your ways in doing it. And I actually could shoot things with the handgun. It was crazy.
They're in Rockland, across from Costco on the other side of Stanford Ranch Road. They also carry all of our fine Rad food products, which are available in the Stupid Store.
Superstore.
If you go to RADradio.com, you need directions to Norcal Gun Vault. They're there as well. And then we've been working with Eddie for a couple of years, and it's sad because sometimes the only reason we have to bring you on is this.
Right.
So if you define, there's different ways to do this. If you define a mass shooting as an incident where at least 4 people are hit with gunfire, even if there are no fatalities, mass killings would be 4 people are killed or more. Either way, there's been 28 mass shootings in June in America. There's been 246 mass shootings this year in America, and we're on pace to break our own record of the greatest number of mass shootings, whether it be schools, concerts, or somewhere else. The 2 that are getting the most attention over the last few weeks, Buffalo, where some lunatic goes out and targets black people. And then, of course, Uvalde, where we get 19 students who are killed and 2 teachers that are left dead. Overall, everybody points to guns. Lots of people points to guns. Right. But we got a lot of crazies in this world. But let's start with Uvalde a little bit, because you and I were talking during it and texting during it. And the story we got the first 24 hours changed dramatically.
Right.
Your dad was law enforcement. Your brother was law enforcement. You're lifelong military. My uncle was law enforcement. We know a lot of law enforcement. This doesn't look real good for law enforcement from what we're seeing and hearing.
No, and the more we look into it, and it's real easy to armchair quarterback any of this because, while it's happening, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot going on. You're trying to coordinate and the pressure of trying to stop the incident. But it just seems like there are so many communication breakdowns within that whole event, and I don't know. I still cannot figure out what they were thinking with why they waited. And again, I can't armchair quarterback it. It's just everybody I've talked to, everybody in law enforcement just said, you run to gunfire. You go in, you clear, you take, you do what you can do. You get as far in as you can while your backup is on the way, and then you proceed. But, whatever their procedure was flawed.
So there's 2 things that have really kind of grabbed people about this. There is the 11-year-old survivor, Mia Cirillo, who went before Congress to talk about the horror of the massacre where she covered herself in blood to trick the shooter into thinking she was dead.
Wow.
She watched her teacher get shot in the head, She saw her friend gunned down, and then she covered her Lilo and Stitch shirt in her classmate's blood.
God.
She testified, quote, "The shooter told my teacher good night and shot her in the head." And that was jarring to a lot of people. That was the precursor to before Matthew McConaughey got before Congress, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Then there's Pete Arredondo. He's the chief of police for the Uvalde School District, who has not spoken out because he didn't want to compound the community's grief or cast blame at others, he said. But he did speak out the other day, and it's starting to get more attention. It kind of got buried because there's so much else going on. He was the first officer to arrive, and almost immediately he teamed up with a Uvalde police officer and began checking classrooms looking for the gunman. He remembers the gunman fired a burst of shots from inside the classroom, grazing police officers who were approaching from the north. Some of the bullets pierced the classroom door, and others went through the classroom wall as well. So Arredondo checked to see if the door on the right, which would be room 111, would open. Another officer tried to open room 112. They're trying to get in to where the shooter is. Both of these doors are locked, and they are reinforced with a hefty steel jamb because they're designed to keep an actual shooter from the outside from getting in. The shooter's inside.
Right.
And now the cops are trying to get in, and they don't have the ability to kick in the door and confront the shooter. They don't have battering rams, anything. They just arrived. The shooter, while they're there doing this, checking the knobs, according to the chief, fires his gun at least 2 more times as police wait in the hallway outside the classrooms. Now, this is where you get that story that as this is happening, there's 911 calls from coming inside the classroom. Chief Arredondo said he was not aware of the 911 calls because he didn't have his radio, and no one in the hallway relayed that information to him. To that, Arredondo says he believed that carrying the radios would slow him down when he showed up. He knew from experience the radios didn't always work in some school buildings, so he didn't take them. And that decision meant that for the rest of the ordeal, he was not in radio contact with any of the agencies that swarmed the scene. For Monday morning quarterbacking, you can go back to that at some point and go, was that the right decision to say, I'm leaving the radios behind? Right. My understanding is you don't usually get out of contact with your backup.
Right. No, you stay in contact. My understanding is you would stay in contact because there's too many events going on around. There's people that are coming in from other ways. Somebody may say, "Hey, I found a window open over here. I can," you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know to coordinate it.
Now, this next part's really interesting because after these shootings, especially school shootings, everybody screams and yells something has to be done, and it's so interesting how inherently we can go back so many times and go, well, if this would have been done right, none of this would have happened. This next few paragraphs is like a Keystone Cops comedy if it's not so tragic.
What?
Officers in the hallway had few options. Chief Arredondo tried to talk to the gunman through the walls in an effort to establish rapport. That's standard. Gunman didn't respond. With the gunman still firing sporadically, Arredondo realized that children and teachers in adjacent rooms are now in danger if the gunman started shooting through the walls. He had asked for keys that could open the door. Because remember, it's reinforced. Because unlike most other school districts in the country, the Uvalde Police Department officers don't carry master keys to the schools. Instead, they request them from an available staff member when they're needed.
What? Oh my God, no.
Eventually,
Oh no.
40 minutes later,
Oh God.
a janitor arrives with 6 keys. Arredondo tries each on a door adjacent to the room. They don't open. Then another key ring arrives with 30 keys. Chief Arredondo says, I was praying one of them was going to open up the door each time I tried a key. None did. And then 77 minutes after it all began, officers were able to get the key to unlock the door and fatally shoot the gunman.
Oh, God.
Wow.
No.
We'll talk about the gun thing, but
It's a key.
if we had a bit different key policy, this could have gone differently.
Yes.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's really hard to make a call on this. You anticipate locking down the children because the school's safe, but if the gunman gets in and gets into a classroom, you just, shot yourself in the foot, coin phrase, and it's you just have to think past it. I mean, Uvalde's a small town.
Right.
They know everybody, so
There's 6 cops in
nobody
the
was
whole district.
expecting. Right. Nobody was expecting this level of, atrocity in that small town. But you got to account for it. You got every police department, every school district police department really needs to look at this and say, okay, access. We have to have access to this in the event they get a lockdown. I mean, somehow you've got to be able to
Oh
get
my
in.
god!
Yeah, and you're so right. And it's got to be all contingencies. The very thing designed to protect kids in the classroom is what stopped the cops from getting in to protect kids in the classroom.
Right.
Well, and because it's so small, and everyone knows everyone, it's like the key thing should just have been a thing.
But also because it's so small, it's like this doesn't happen here.
Right.
We're Mayberry.
To your point, Eddie, like everyone
just-
else needs to be like, it doesn't matter. We're like Mayberry.
We'll just call Jim.
We need to have all this.
Jim's always here. Jim the janitor's always here.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So this again has spurred the debate and the discussion. So we've had you on plenty of times and we've talked. There are far right 2A folks, Second Amendment folks, who say no restrictions at all whatsoever. It's a slippery slope. The minute you do anything that says gun control, it leads to our guns being taken away.
Right.
And no doubt there are far left nut jobs on the far left who actually do want to take guns away.
Right.
And then there's the rest of us that are normal
Right.
and in the middle. Now you're a gun store owner. In general, are you slippery slope? Don't even talk about gun control, or are you willing to listen to what's being said out there yet again?
I mean, any discussion on safety, any discussion on access, and I say that in the sense of, there are people out there with there have been red flags, and I'm not talking about the red flag laws, but it's hard to judge somebody at the moment that they're at the counter, unless they say or do things. And we've had customers that have done things, and we've discussed with them the fact that we won't sell them a firearm.
You have done that.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
You have made that
Good
call at the
for
counter.
you.
Yes, sir.
Good for
And
you.
nothing stops that person from going to another gun shop.
They do not. You just have to.
There isn't a system set up where you then call somebody and go, put this guy on a list.
No. I mean, it's there's nothing in place like that's automatic. Now, somebody told me one time we're the first line of defense in some instances like this. But a 18-year-old kid walking in to buy, an $1,800 firearm, and how he paid for it, we still don't know. They haven't followed the money yet. And then 2 weeks later buys another one. But I mean, again, he's just conducting a legal transaction. How do you know that this guy's going to go whacked out? Right. You don't. And if there were red flags before, are there mechanisms for that? One of the things that the Senate is proposing is going in deeper on 18 to 21-year-olds. And you look back at history, you look back in the 50s and in the 40s when guns were very prevalent. They had gun safety classes in school. You didn't see this level of mass shootings in school. Whether there were mass murders going on, that's a whole different entity there. But in today's environment, today's social environment, I mean, these kids can't go home and get away from the bullies. It's there all the time. And so the level of mental fatigue that has to occur for these people who already have low self-esteem, low self-worth, but they can be desensitized to violence just by the world that we live in, the shows that we watch, the games that we play.
Yes.
It can easily lead to a Sandy Hook because, you can become detached. And whether or not, there's a mechanism to, if you're because there's two different kinds of background checks. There's what DOJ does, which looks at all your state and local records, and then they'll do the national background check to see if there's anything there. Then there in the other states where they don't have a level of check like that, and there are a couple that do, there's just a national criminal background check, and it's instantaneous. It takes 10 minutes. They're looking at 18 to 21-year-olds. You're going to go through a 3-day wait. We're going to look a little more into your background to make sure there are no red flags. I don't see a problem with that because they're not denying you the gun when you're trying to buy it. Like a ban would do. They're just going to check in a little further into some resources. So, I know there's a lot of people out there who are hard 2A that think, no, I should be able to walk in, buy my gun, and walk out. The Constitution says I have a right. But you have a right to free speech, but you can't say bomb in an airport kind of thing, so you have to play it with the common, right. You do have to play it in common sense.
So let's got a lot of attention. Actor Matthew Mcconaughey, who we think may have political ambitions, although nobody's really sure where he's at. He is a gun owner. He's from Uvalde. And this is about a minute long. And look, he, on one hand, he's so entertaining the way he talks. So it's hard to not get distracted by the substance of what he's saying, but he goes through a bullet list of things. Again, no pun intended in any way, that he was hoping to see. And then we can talk about each one of them really quickly and where we're at on many of them today.
We need to invest in mental health care. We need safer schools. We need to restrain sensationalized media coverage. We need to restore our family values. We need to restore our American values. And we need responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership. We need background checks. We need to raise the minimum age to purchase an AR-15 rifle to 21. We need a waiting period for those rifles. We need red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them. These are reasonable, practical, tactical regulations to our nation, states, communities, schools, and homes. Responsible gun owners are fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by some deranged individuals. These regulations are not a step back. They're a step forward for a civil society and the Second Amendment.
We are seeing more gun owners say that there are reckless people that are giving us a bad name. Let's go through some of the things that he brought up. Background checks for everyone. This is the thing you always hear quoted, that even gun owners say, yeah, why aren't we background checking everyone? Who isn't getting background check, and why aren't we doing that?
The only people that aren't background checked would be a law enforcement officer with a same-day letter from his department authorizing him to come in, do the purchase, and leave that same day. Their information is entered into the system, but they're almost instantaneously approved because they are vetted 24/7. Now, if something has happened that has caused them to not be able to do that, say a domestic violence or something of that nature, it will show up later, at which time we contact the department.
And then is it also like family to family? There's no background check? Is that another one I've heard that they target?
That maybe in other states, not. I mean, again, all I can go for is what we do in California, and
Yeah.
everything is backgrounded. But in other states, there are. If you do it in an FFL, if you do it in a licensed gun dealer, they do the NICS check, the national. What do they call it here? Anyway, the NICS check. It's
Google it.
Instantaneous criminal background check is what it is.
Well, and it just, again, trying to be fair in this discussion, the universal background checks would have stopped none of any of the mass shootings of the last 5 years.
Right.
So it sounds great. And for a lot of us, we're like, well, why aren't we doing it? And I've heard in some states gun shows, but okay, either way. What about raising the age for AR-15 purchases to 21? And this was one, I've always had a problem with this because of the randomness of it.
Right.
I don't understand how you can drive at 16, you can die for your country at 18, but you can't drink until you're 21. Right. I do get the argument that 18-year-olds going into the military get trained on these weapons, and that's what a lot of people want to argue. Just on its face, you were talking about, yes, they're looking at now at least a longer waiting period, but the idea of raising the age to buy specific types of guns from 18 to 21, where do you fall on that?
I don't think there should be an age limit. I think it should come down to what training you've had. So if you're 18 to 21, you need to take the hunter safety course. You need to have that little extra, because there's the test that we do is knowledge based, but the hunter safety course is knowledge based, and there's hands-on, or at least there was at one time. But there's this more in-depth training. The way they try to write the laws, though, it's not saying a firearm of this specific characteristic. They say semi-automatic centerfire rifles, and so that eliminates a lot of rifles that are used in hunting, even modern sporting rifles, even AR-15s, which is the other term for it. They're used in hunting as well. I mean, so where do you draw that line? I think the 18 to 21 banning is wrong. Again, it comes down to responsible gun ownership. But Mcconaughey said so much more in that. And I agree with everything except for banning that. I think responsible gun owners like us are tired of these people doing this and then constantly putting us in question.
So the one that scares me the most is the one that has the grayest area, and it's the one that has the most influence behind it. And I've been scared and speaking out against red flag laws for years.
Right.
Because the way they're written in many states, they can be abused so easily. And I've warned our fellow gun owners and 2A advocates to stop pushing red flag laws in mass. They need to be red flag laws that are very specifically laid out. There was a case in Rhode Island that got all the way to the Supreme Court called Caniglia versus Strom. Police in Rhode Island seized the personal firearms of a 68-year-old man whose wife had called in a complaint against him after they had an argument. That man had committed no crime. He'd never been convicted of a crime, and yet the authorities took away his guns under a red flag warning. He sued under the Fourth Amendment. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the result wasn't even close. 9-0. The Supreme Court, 9-0? Are you kidding me? Essentially, that's a way of saying red flag laws written too broadly are already unconstitutional.
Sure.
And this is the concern, because part of what they're talking about is that the Congress will encourage all states. They'll pay them off. They'll bribe them to create red flag laws. And the concern for some is that under red flag laws, depending on how they're written, all that's required is a complaint. Somebody says you seem dangerous, because they can even do an ex parte hearing where you're not there.
Right, no due process.
You're not even allowed to speak your defense. The complaint doesn't even come from a grand jury. It can come from anyone, including someone who hates you, someone who doesn't like you, a neighbor that says you're unhinged, an ex-wife, things like This is what scares me about red flag laws, and I don't know how you stop 50 states from going all over the place and writing them way too broadly. Am I just paranoid?
Well, and no, you're not. And it happens a lot here in California with temporary restraining orders. I mean, you get a couple who's in an ugly split where there is no real threat, but the one partner wants control over the kids or the house or whatever, and so they can put this into people that I see coming in. I mean, there's been a few I've been like, yep. But most of them that come in and they're devastated, and it's that they've been tagged that as a threat that they would harm their wife or child that they love very much, and maybe they don't want the divorce. But again, and you could say things in these heat of the battle moments that just they don't mean anything, but yet under the guise of safety, they're able to bring these things in. And how many do they prevent? I couldn't tell you, but I've seen my share of what I think are abused laws in that sense.
I feel like the answer is something that has passed us by, so we have to try and come up with something, because I look back to when you were talking about the 40s and 50s. Gosh, even when I was in junior high and high school, I knew of kids that owned guns, and they in high school they brought them to school. They were in their trucks, right? They'd go hunting sometimes before, and we did not have one shooting at high school. And there's like some disconnect that's been lost of the respect, the teaching maybe of the respect of that firearm, or just a respect of life, maybe.
Well, you and Mcconaughey you covered all of it. You said it's passed us by. Of course it has. And look, it's neat of him to say, family values and American values, those are gone. By what he's talking about, by what you're talking about.
Yeah, just respect of life, even, because of course not everyone throughout time in America has owned a gun in these families, but there was at least a respect of people, of life, just the value system you'd set up in the household. But yeah, it's like, that's the answer, but that no longer can be the answer. So now we have to try and come up with these things that we hope can be the answer, but and
that's what it is. It's hoping.
It's hoping. Yes.
So Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. There aren't many reasonable Republicans or Democrats anymore. Manchin seems to be one of them. He's a big gun owner. You got to be from West Virginia. He says that what they've worked out, no law-abiding gun owner should be offended by. Let's go through some of what we hear they've got. The proposed gun reform package includes funding for school safety resources. Now, I stop right there and I go, how are they going to agree on that? We got this note from Derek on this. I personally believe if they let teachers carry and allow them to keep a weapon in the classroom, it would lower the amount of casualties in situations like these. Teachers who wish to carry would have to have certificates or training, of course. Okay, well, not everybody agrees that more guns is a good thing. I don't even know school safety resources, what does that mean? Metal detectors everywhere? Is it going to be state by state whether or not teachers can be armed, and what can you do at schools? I heard somebody right after the Uvalde thing, we got 99,000 public schools in America, so it's going to take us 5-10 years to do this, but he basically said every single one of them needs to look like a locked down, you're trying to enter into a military installation. Yes, metal detectors at every entrance. If you want to stop school shootings, that's what he was saying. Too much, or these are our kids, and that's what we need to do.
I mean, whatever safety precautions we need to make, we need to make. If it's a matter of having to walk through a certain door when you come in just to see if you've got something. I mean, whatever. Kids will kids will numb to that in a sense. It won't be like some major invasion. I've seen a really good piece on TV. Rick Ross and whatever he did a look at a school that had a system that was installed that was about $400,000, and it involved in every classroom there was a switch and a safe area. Every classroom had red line on the floor, which meant that behind there was not visible from the window. There was in that area there was a switch where it said either safe or not safe, and there was magnetic locks on all the doors that could be locked down, one punch, and they all locked down. And then outside in the hallways, they have smoke generators, they have flashing lights, and they have cameras and motion detectors, so they could follow a gunman and disrupt them as they're doing it.
Wow.
And I mean, so when you look at measures like that, when we're sending how many billions overseas for foreign aid for other countries, when we could spend, and again, it's not cheap, but in the scope of government money, this is the drop in the bucket. Right. And so every school could have these type of systems. At least that, forget the metal detectors, maybe just something that if somebody gets in, you've got that instant lockdown.
Right. We'll do, what was it, $6 trillion for COVID relief, but we can't find billions to protect our kids.
Sure.
Right. And the problem with it just being these random, okay, we'll do a metal detector. Most school shooters, unfortunately, when they walk in, they know it's a one-way trip. And so somebody standing there and saying, hey, stop, you're setting off the metal detector, that on its own is like a dead end. Everything you're describing, Eddie, I feel it should be standard practice. It's unfortunate that we're there, but we are there. So let's get accustomed to it, right?
Well, and also, I mean, at some point, I guess if we're going to try to have this discussion responsibly, we should back up and go, we're not going to get rid of the guns in America.
No.
Right.
First of all,
that Pandora's box.
Right. Illegal, criminals aren't going to turn their guns in.
Oh, gosh, no.
And a lot of law-abiding citizens aren't going to turn their guns in. And you're just not going to get rid, especially in America. These people that scream Australia, it's like, stop. We've got to deal with realistic solutions.
Right.
If Dawn is willing to say, as she did, the whole family value, American value thing, that ain't coming back the way
sadly, yeah,
most of us would have described. Right. And then we also have to say we're not getting rid of all guns and be realistic.
Well, and here's the thing: as a responsible gun owner, I do understand that the guns we have for protection aren't the end-all be-all. I could still get taken down. They give me a chance, though. They give me a shot at life. So, when it comes to the schools and the teachers arming themselves, I'm not against that if they're comfortable with it.
Right.
If the teachers are comfortable with it and they're experienced in it and they have proven to show their capabilities, great. You go right ahead. Because if I'm a criminal or a crazy person and I'm walking down a neighborhood, because schools will display this as well. I've seen it at public schools. And there's houses with, we don't carry guns. And then there's houses where we're armed. I'm staying away from the I'm armed homes. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to the ones that aren't armed. Now, it's not to say the ones that are armed, maybe I could have beat them, who knows. But I also know they also have a gun. So I'm going to kind of stay away.
And we also need to make sure we don't pander to people who like other teachers at these schools who say they're not comfortable knowing some of their fellow teachers are armed. At some point, we've got to say, look, we're trying to protect the kids here, and you're going to have to find a way to be on the other side of the school or whatever it is. But what about more school resource officers? I keep hearing there are endless retired military and law enforcement who would love to get paid to be one of these guys.
Right, but you'd have to have a very there was a resource officer at this school,
right? And
he was off-site doing something. What was he doing? Buying breakfast, getting groceries. I don't know what he was doing. They haven't talked about that.
Picking up a truant, could be all sorts of things.
But depending upon the nature of that person, I think a better idea is you've got peace officers who are being paid all the time. So just like a military watch, like I have to go over here for a week and stand a military watch to supplement something, then maybe, they do a rotation where this week you're at this school and your job is just, kind of being there, monitoring the cameras, being the communications link and being that officer for that area. So you hire an extra 20 officers, but they're not the only ones doing it. Everybody's doing it so that you don't just have Joe, the resource officer. You've got, Stan from Rockland PD, who is at my school right now this week, and next week we'll have Doug from Rockland PD. So you're buying that insurance and that peace of mind that because if you arm the teachers, you don't know how they're going to react when the shooting starts. And all of a sudden, if you get somebody who panics and they're carrying a loaded firearm, they now become a resource for a gunman. So you have to weigh that carefully. And I think just giving that law enforcement resource officer who's active, because a retired person we can become complacent, and we don't want to do that. But if you have somebody that's their mindset all the time, they're going to be more in tune with handling.
I love that you point out that just putting a gun in the hands of a teacher is not in and of itself an answer, because we don't know how they're going to react in that moment.
True.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not opposed to the idea, though, right? And the way, like when Rob, you said don't pander, we have to not pander to their teachers and be uncomfortable. The conversation that I would have with them is, well, how have most of these shootings ended? They got shot. So if we have someone here already armed, we have a chance. I would hope when you're having that conversation, you're not guaranteeing them, because you cannot guarantee them that the teacher will be able to shoot them dead. But that's how they've the guns that have disarmed these shooters or killed them. That's good. That's the positive.
Well, this is the problem,
bad
though,
is
is
what
that
they're doing with the gun.
We're dealing with the loud voices on both sides of irrational people in society, and we now have two high-profile examples, Parkland and Uvalde, where armed officers were on scene and didn't stop. And so it makes people go, see, guns aren't the answer and good guys aren't the answer, and it fuels this. So if we allow teachers to arm themselves and then there's a shooting at a school where there's armed teachers and they don't respond, you're going to get the nuts. See, this is, and because they're going to dismiss all the other possible possibilities.
Well, even with the armed teachers, they're not always responsible either. Students get their hands on it if they misplace it somewhere.
I mean, Kyle, I think you and I both told the stories. We both found liquor bottles from our teachers in school. Okay.
I found a lot of other things. I went snooping.
Hello, Mackenzie. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I love Eddie's idea for having the metal detectors in schools. I mean, we obviously got really used to it in airports after. There's a horrible movie, Bring It On 3, where the school actually does have metal detectors implemented because it's in a not-so-great part of town. But I think everybody really would get used to it, and it would be a plausible option if given the money for it.
Like Eddie said, especially kids, they're so adaptable.
I will also say, just to circle back to something you said early in this conversation, Rob, that this isn't just about arming people, disarming people, having more security. There's an order of operations that could have been implemented that would have alleviated a lot of the issues in this situation. There's other things that could be implemented in terms of just officers having keys for the school or so on and so forth. It doesn't always boil down to the firearm, right?
Yeah, I mean, keys are the obvious one to point out. This, I also heard a brilliant, it was a law enforcement officer at some point over the last many weeks said every local law enforcement agency should have blueprints of every school.
Sure, they can do it on iPads. Every department can have it in every vehicle.
It's 2022. That's right. You can pull it up in every vehicle as you're racing to the scene of whatever school is under attack. Boom, here's the whole blueprint. So hopefully dispatch can tell you he's in quad 4, building 3. You can zoom in right on it and immediately have an idea as you show up.
And you could unlock and lock doors in that location. I mean, they talk about, so you don't have key locks, you have magnetic locks. Now, and there's bypasses for those. So you learn how to, again, it allows more controlled access without providing these situations like we don't have a key.
I just remember, like, years past, I was so not on board for, like, all these detectors and all these things that made it not school. Right? Because it's so sad. And that's all it's come down to now. I mean, honestly, this is the world we live in now. And if that's the way we have to go, we have to go. But it's just, because
it's not school anymore as it is.
Yeah.
Because half of them are scared and terrified.
It isn't. It just makes my heart sad that, like, this is their reality. When you used to just be able to go to school, there's not any of that, right? Like, it shouldn't even be anything they have to think about, but it is, and that's where we're at, and so that's, the reality.
When I was in elementary school, we used to have to get under our desks as for bomb,
Right,
nuclear bombing.
yeah.
So it's always been there. We hide
something.
under our desks with our heads all tucked so that there were nice little ash piles underneath every desk for them to
I just feel like the armed guards.
So it's always been there.
Right, it adds to it, right?
Yeah.
The armed guards,
Yeah.
the security, but it's like, well, we need that now.
But it's insurance,
Yeah.
I mean,
No, it is.
Every student should have a level 3 plate in their backpack so that they at all times have at least that little measure of protection.
Yes.
Here's an interesting angle. Dana says, how do we address that a lot of the school shootings are performed by students or ex-students that have been through the shooting drills? They know the hiding spots. They know what the teachers, students, and staff are doing during the drills. Can't think everything.
Yeah, you can't prevent that. I mean, all you can do is, again, disrupt, disorient.
That'd be quite a mastermind, and I feel like they're mainly just...
And you're never going to defeat those.
Yeah.
You're never... Evil does what evil does.
Yeah.
You're never going to defeat somebody who has a determined path of destruction.
That understanding and acceptance is what's really lost in this conversation, is that there are always going to be evil people, and all we can do is everything we can do. Hello, Brandon. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm a former Army veteran. Well, I'm an Army veteran, I'm sorry. And something I'd like to say is,
Happy birthday.
just to add a layer to what you guys were talking about before, having law enforcement, peace officers, or, members of the military at a school, you really don't know even what they're going to do in a combat situation unless they are somebody that's already been in a combat situation or an officer-involved shooting. Terry, we learned that you can get all the training in the world, but once you're actually in combat, you don't really know how someone's going to act.
Yep.
So it's just even having National Guard members or, police officers that are junior, newer on the force trying to get overtime by doing that stuff, that doesn't guarantee that when it happens, clearly stated by Uvalde, that they're going to rise to the occasion and do what they need to do to protect those children.
Back to the previously made point. That's the problem, is that too many people in America on all sides of this are looking for a guarantee.
Right.
Yep,
No,
there is none.
Seriously.
And maybe the resource officer is the communication link. They understand procedures. So and I agree with him that you don't know how somebody's going to react until they've been shot at. But if you have people who are the thing that I think would be most lost is you get somebody there and they're there for a week and they hate this part of the job and they're not watching the security cameras. You have to have somebody who's trained to take that serious, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Hello there, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. I understand your guys' idea of, wanting to put men at the schools, but I drive by these schools and all there is just a little 6-foot wrought iron fence around the school. I'm 45, I can jump over that and no problem. I don't even what's really going to be the point of that?
Snipers on the roof.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the thing is, you make a good point, John, and there's always going to be an answer. And how ridiculous do we want to be? Okay, the way the schools are designed, you can still infiltrate. So do we do nothing? Well, right. So Eddie says, I tell you what, why don't we put snipers on the roof? I mean, because we've got to stop with the let's do nothing versus let's turn our schools into looking like prison camps from World War II.
Which, and John, no offense whatsoever, but that kind of, to me, symbolizes the issue is, well, what's the point? And I just feel that no matter what is suggested, like for Eddie, put snipers on the roof. Well, what if the guy gets a helicopter and drives over? Right. You know what I mean?
He's got a drone with a bomb.
What are we going to do? Just pretend like nothing is happening? I get it. We can't I am not under the mindset that we're ever going to stop this completely from happening. It's already, Pandora's box is open, so to speak. This is in the world. But making it not every other week in the news would be cool.
Yeah, not sensationalizing.
Right. And that sensationalizing of the story to me, at first it hit my ear weird, but then you think back to just the birth of yellow journalism, and it was just this part of history where it seemed that the media split in two, and it was just the part of people who just want to get information out so you know what's happening in your world, and then the storytelling and the yarn weaving and the adding and the sensationalizing and the describing the body language of the person you're talking about, not just describing the facts of the case. I do agree with that I think that we make these stories way too sexy.
That's the other pipe dream that Matthew McConaughey rightfully mentioned, but nothing's going to change.
Oh, God.
American family values and sensationalized media.
And the realities we need to realize and understand. But for me personally, I could be wrong, it's like I will know all of our lawmakers' true intentions when they don't look at all of this. If their only focus is guns, then they really don't want to protect our kids, because a lot of things have been brought to the table that could actually help, building a bigger wall around the school, who knows, right? Or the metal detectors, or even the devices you were talking about of that 400,000 idea, right? Because the money can be found. If you really want to protect these kids, I feel like we would be taking all of this into consideration and doing a little bit of all of it.
So that's where we go back to school safety resources. That is going to be included. And a lot of the other stuff that would be targeting guns is not going to be included if all of the reports are true. They have rejected the idea of the assault weapons ban for those under 21. They have rejected a high-capacity magazine ban. They've rejected universal background checks. I mean, really, when you look at what they say they're going to do, the big scary thing, at least for me, is the red flag law thing and how vague that could be. We got this email from Chris that says, thanks, Eddie, for bringing a calm, well-thought-out voice to the masses. The lack of due process under red flag laws are insane. Working the civilian side of law enforcement and countering emergency protective orders that are granted for allegations of abuse has concerned me greatly. A plain he said, she said, or they said argument can result in seizing of their firearms without any further evidence needed. That's the scary part of what they may be proposing here.
Right, and I think the mindset is you'd rather be safe than sorry. But again, there's nobody going to the person and saying, okay, what did you say? What happened here? And then giving both sides of the story. And then when the TRO gets dropped because they don't show up for court in 6 months, there's no punitive for you filed false charges. You cost resources that could have been better spent finding a school shooter.
As always, Eddie, we have solved the world's problems. I thank you so much for helping us out.
Sure.
Eddie from Norcal Gun Vault, online at norcalgunvault.com in Rockland. Great guy, very informative, and anything you want to know, reach out. Anything else you want to mention is going on at Norcal Gun Vault?
No, just like I said, stock is up, inventory's up. Come on in, talk to us. Still a lot of new firearm people out there that may be thinking about it. Come talk to us. We want you to have that peace of mind.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you being here.